Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to the regular meeting of the Mayor and Board of Trustees for the Village of Burr Ridge. Today is July 23rd. Our first order of business is a Pledge of Allegiance. May we all stand to say Pledge of Allegiance? Ready?
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
May I have roll call, please?
Trustee Francis.
Here.
Trustee Model. Trustee Paveza.
Here.
Trustee McCall. Trustee Snyder.
Here.
Trustee Schiappa.
Here.
Mayor Straub.
Here. It's worth noting the trustee model is actually at the White House today, so he's unable to get back in time. Our first order of business are for residents, anyone that lives within the village. Is there any residents that like to make comments at this time? You're seeing no one, we're going to go through the consent agenda. The consent agenda are all items listed with an asterisk, are considered to be routine by the village board, and will be enacted by one motion. There will be no separate discussion of these items unless a board member or citizen so requests, in which event the item will be removed. Under minutes, we have 5A, approval of regular board meeting of June 11th, 2018. B, approval of regular board meeting of June 25th, 2018. C, receive and file draft pathway commission meeting of July 12th, 2018. And D, receive and file draft plan commission meeting of July 16th, 2018. Under ordinances, we have nothing under ordinances. They're all
16.
Sorry. Under ordinances, we have 6D, approval of an ordinance amending Chapter 8, which is stormwater runoff of the Burr Ridge Municipal Code, to adopt the Cook County Watershed Management Ordinance by reference, as amended on February 15th, 2018, and adopt the County of DuPage countywide stormwater and floodplain ordinance by reference, as amended on April 23rd, 2013. Resolutions, 7B, adoption of a resolution approving final plat of subdivision of Fallingwater First Edition. C, adoption of resolution approving amendment to final plat Spectrum Senior Living Planned Unit Development located at 16W301 91st Street. Under considerations, we have 8D, acknowledgement of withdrawal of request for a subdivision fence with a variation from the subdivision ordinance for the height of said fence. That's a PC, Plan Commission 08-2018 King Brevard House. E, approval of recommendation to award contract for 2018 pavement marking program to Superior Road Striping Incorporated of Melrose Park, Illinois, in the amount of $16,090. F, approval of recommendation to award contract for 2018 concrete replacement program to Globe Construction Incorporated of Addison, Illinois, in the amount of $21,500. G, approval of recommendation to award contract for engineering services of the 2018 water main replacement projects to Thomas Engineering Group, LLC of Lombard, Illinois, in the amount of $72,909.62. H, approval recommendation to ratify emergency repairs to Village Hall HVAC controller to Dynamic Heating and Piping Company of Crestwood, Illinois, in the amount of $7,175. I, approval recommendation to authorize payment of annual fee for the Learn database to Bright of Fishers, Victor, New York, in the amount of $6,995. J, approval of recommendation to approve temporary sign replacements requested by the Burr Ridge Park District Foundation for the Pedal the Parks event on Sunday, September 9th, 2018. K, approval of recommendation to fill a vacancy created by the retirement of Barbara Pop. L, approval of the July 9th, 2018 vendor list in the amount of $519,617.18 for all funds, plus $193,023.58 for payroll, for a grand total of $712,640.76, which includes a special expenditure of $252,461.40 to Lindell Brothers Incorporated for estimate 1 for the 2018 road program. M, approval of the July 23rd, 2018 vendor list in the amount of $432,673.05 for all funds, plus $198,277.16 for payroll, for a grand total of $630,950.21, which includes a special expenditure of $15,772.63 to Burns and McDonnell for engineering of the CLR or County Line Road Sidewalk Improvement Project. That's what happens when you don't have a board meeting and you have extra stuff this week. So may I have a motion to approve the following items on the consent agenda? We have 5A, 5B, C, and D, 6D, 7B and C, and 8D, E, F, G, H, I, J, K, L, and M.
So moved.
Motion, and a second?
Second.
Roll call, please.
Trustee Snyder?
Yes.
Trustee Francis?
Yes.
Trustee Pavesa?
yes,
Trustee Skiappa?
Yes.
4-0.
Motion passes 4-0. Okay, and ordinances. We have 6A. Doug?
Yes, and this is consideration of an ordinance amending Chapter 12 of the Municipal Code regarding the permitting, regulation, and deployment of small wireless facilities. And I'll have Assistant to the Village Administrator, Evan Walter, give you a brief overview.
Could you pull up a PowerPoint with some of the downloads folder? Thank you, Village Administrator. Thank you, Board of Trustees. Welcome to members of the public. Briefly, I'll be discussing the topic of small cell wireless legislation within the state, as well as an ordinance that we have before you this evening for consideration. Very, very broadly, small cell has been a technology issue that's been building for several years across the nation. It's a way of delivering data from towers to your phone. Everybody's got a smartphone in their pocket now, and the data network that you see that sits on tall monopoles on top of the water tower as you drive by interstates, that capacity, that network is no longer at capacity. We don't have the space on that network to deliver data to your phone at the rates that the customers require anymore. So the answer to that is to start to facilitate these small cell wireless facilities, SCMs, small cell wireless facilities. These are small, locally placed facilities that you'll begin to see around town, around the state, really in your daily life, that act in close proximity to the users that have them. So when you're using your phone on the street or at Village Center, your data will be routed through one of these small cell facilities and then up to the larger network on the monopoles. So it eliminates a lot of the backhaul, a lot of the backlog that you might have with bad data connections, and it really simplifies and creates more network coverage throughout the entire network. Now, if you have a better network, it means that there's going to be more facilities that we have to deploy, and that's where these small cell facilities come into action. So again, the small cell wireless facilities, they transmit the data and the wireless communications to and from wireless devices such as your computer or your cell phone. Recently, Senate Bill 1451 was passed in Illinois. This is now Public Act 100-0585. This is a bill that permits the municipal powers in Illinois to grant ordinances and enact our own regulations pursuant to these regulations that the state has set up for us. In Illinois, we're a Dillon's rule state, which means that the state creates powers and we have to follow them. Non-home rule communities, these are big examples of this sort of thing. Really, this act imposes limits on municipal powers to determine where these facilities may be located, what is required to actually get a permit to locate these facilities, as well as what fees we can charge for the permit, as well as rent on anything that we own, such as a telephone pole, street light, things like that. We're not the first state to have this law passed. We're the 20th state. This law was passed on April 12th, took effect June 1st, and we have until August 1st to pass an ordinance that allows us to have some local control over what we're doing here. The ordinance does allow for maximum local control based on the powers delegated to the village by the state. So what we're proposing tonight to add to Chapter 12 of our local ordinances is really the maximum that we can offer. This is the most control. This is the most we can charge for on a fee basis. This is the most we can do in terms of locating, how we regulate locations for these types of wireless facilities, et cetera. So what can Burr Ridge do under this law? We can require that permits be applied for, which includes specific information such as where it's going to go, how high it's going to be, what type of facility you're going to put in, et cetera. We can require that an agreement be entered into with the village for co-location upon village-owned poles. So you have a network of utilities that you want to co-locate on, such as power lines, street lights, traffic signals, things like that. We can enter into agreements with utilities to go ahead and figure out where these are all going to go. This bill restricts small cell wireless facilities from blocking public safety communications. So if a provider wanted to usurp our police vans, they could not do that. We have to have room for the police department, for the fire department to communicate within the network. You can't bump the public safety for the purposes of providing data to the customers on a day-to-day basis. It allows for alternate placing of small cells on new poles, i.e., if a provider came in and said, I wanted to place a new pole in the right-of-way, but 50 feet away there's a telephone pole, and we said, why don't you locate on that? We have the power to make them do that, provided it's reasonable, provided that the technology is available to be put on that pole, things like that. So we have the power to, I guess, reduce the amount of clutter in the right-of-way overall. Height and size restrictions, it's basically measured in cubic feet. The largest item that you'll see is a 6 cubic foot box that goes on the top of the pole. It's about the size of the college refrigerator we all had at one point. That's the largest that it could possibly be. Implement permit fees. If it's going to be one per permit, it's $1,000. If it's multiple, it's up to $650. We can also charge up to $200 a year per small cell wireless facility that we put in the village anywhere. So again, we get a one-time permit fee, but we also get revenue on an annual basis for each time that we co-locate with something such as a small cell facility. Same for implementing recurring annual tolls, and then things such as identification and named as additional insured party. And finally, we can establish design guidelines for poles should they need to be built. So we don't have to be stuck with just a silver metallic street light pole out in the middle of the road. We can design a stealthy, nicer looking, I don't know if there's anything that we can say is perfect looking, but we have the ability to control design standards for new poles. A couple of things that we can't do. We cannot deny co-location of a small cell facility or require placement on a specific type or category of pole. So we cannot say that you can only locate on telephone poles or you can only locate on street lights. We have to accept the best option regardless of what that option happens to be within the area that they need to go. We cannot classify a small cell wireless facility as a special use. In basic terms, these things are permitted uses in almost every zoning district. They're permitted in every right-of-way, especially commercial and industrial zones. So the vast majority of Burr Ridge, these will be classified as a permitted use. We cannot impose horizontal separation distances between poles, i.e. we cannot say that they need to be 1,000 feet apart. We can say that 100-foot rule applies where if you want to put something in, we can provide the best option for you, but we cannot provide a minimum standard between each pole. We have to kind of accept them where they come. We cannot require provision of services from utilities, i.e. we can't say as long as you're going to go on a pole, you need to provide us with free internet, free fiber. We have to just take it as it is, take our $200 a year and deal with it. We cannot require permits for routine maintenance. So if something went out, we cannot require a permit for that. It's permits basically for putting in and taking off. That's basically the extent of it. Finally, I know it's been asked by at least one board member, what could we put up our own network of poles and start our own Burr Ridge small cell utility? The answer is not feasible. We cannot charge more than the industry standard rate for rent on village-owned poles, which is $200 a year. This is a figure that was come up with by a large number of people within the industry as well as at the state as a reasonable number for what a municipal could charge rent based on what we own. So we can't charge $1,000 a year per pole if we were to come up with our own network of poles. Just can't do it. Some commonly cited small cell facility locations that you're going to be seeing, street and ornamental lights, traffic signals, utility poles, utility strands where the wires cross between two poles, rooftops, that does occur, security camera poles, and then standalone poles. We do see things called cam antennas going up. Cam antennas are basically poles that have a small cell facility on the top that are mostly standalone. So these are the applications that you'll begin to see these small cell wireless facilities entering on. These are some examples of what a small cell facility looks like. As you can see, we've got a couple instances of a light pole here with a small cell facility on top. Not the end of the world. Certainly looks a little sleeker without it, but at the same time, these are not likely going to be boxes that you'll be seeing in the middle of the sidewalk. We do have the ability to make sure that they line up with trees so that we don't impede the sidewalk or impede the road, and we do have the ability to impose a minimum engineering standard away from the road. So if our minimum engineering standard was 5 feet off the road for a light pole, we can do the same thing for a small cell utility. We don't have to have them right on the curb, posing hazardous instances to our public. This is just an example of where a lot of our street lights are within the village. All these would be eligible to have a small cell facility on them. As you can see, this is between 79th and 87th, and then Madison and County Line. Quite a few street lights in this area. We're unlikely to see a lot of new poles in this area that would carry these types of facilities. We'd probably see a lot of co-location on the existing facilities. And so if every single one of these had a small cell facility on it, it'd be $200 a year for each pole. So it could be a little bit of money in there for the village. But this is an example of a dense concentration of village-owned assets. But looking downtown, we have less street light poles downtown. So you might see different applications put up in the village center versus what you might see in a residential sector. So you might see some cam antennas going up here. You might see things installed on the side of the village center because they want to lease their corner, something like that. You might see it on a light pole down here. You might see it disguised as a transformer in this area. There are a lot of options that we can explore with our partners to better hide these within the village. That was a lot of information really fast, but I'm happy to answer any questions you might have.
Trustees?
Well done.
Trustee Francis?
Yes, thank you for the excellent presentation summarizing this complex topic. A couple of questions. Are we able to restrict the height?
Yes.
You said that. And
yes.
What will we be restricting it to?
So antennas can be 10 feet taller than the pole that it's listed on. So if you have your light pole no more than 10 feet over, there are also rules regarding standalone poles that they cannot be taller than 30 feet or 45 feet above sea level, I believe. It's a very complex.
Sea level.
Yeah, I'm shocked that that actually made it into a statewide legislation like that. That's very technical, but I don't know if that preempts certain parts of the village because it is a hilly town and there might be a couple parts where that's not possible. So,
And you touched a little bit about design. Is there any screening available, or can we make these devices look like other things?
yes, I've seen a lot of examples where, in especially downtown urban cores like the village center, I've seen them placed under things that are made to look like air conditioners, which are then screened. Mm-hmm. The industry, while I would say a little intrusive on just making these go everywhere, they have done well to at least provide some screening methods that look more stealthy or a little bit more camouflaged. A common example that I've seen is that they would simply paint it the same color as the pole and install it inside the pole. So the pole might just be a little thicker, and it would just look like a normal street light except for being a bit wider in diameter. So we will have the opportunity after finish this consideration in the future to adopt design standards that we can then implement.
Because the two examples you showed, they were color coordinated with the pole.
Yeah.
And I would think we'd want it to be less obtrusive than something of a contrasting color. So
Yeah.
that's all the questions I had. Thank you.
Can you tell me, I'm sorry, Trustee Scott?
So I'm not that well versed in it. Who's installing it? Is it government? Is it providers? Or
It'll be the providers. So there are a couple of utility, we'll just call them data providers, Verizon, Sprint, all the big names that you think of. A couple of them choose to implement their own items. So Verizon's a good example. They'll own the small cell facility. But, so Mobility works with Sprint. They're going to work as the third-party provider for Sprint. Sprint will rent off of their infrastructure. They'll come to the front desk and get a permit for however many they need at a certain time. They'll go out and install them and maintain them the way that the power grid or the utility grid would be otherwise.
So Verizon will have one small cell and AT&T will have a different looking one. So we could have many different looking small cell.
Provided that we can adopt some sort of uniform standard for how they go on things. So if we said, okay, here's the standard for going on a utility pole or a telephone pole or whatever item that we own. I don't think we actually own the telephone pole.
Okay.
But we can certainly look at adopting a standard which will work with certain applications. Everybody's got a little bit different of a design on how they do it. That's just how it works somehow. But we certainly will have the opportunity to discuss, if you're going to go on a street light, it needs to rest on top of it, or if you want to underground it, how will that look? And we'll have that opportunity to be a little bit more in depth on what it actually looks like as we go forward.
And we don't know how many would be installed in a ridge.
And again, in some cases it might be less because the whole point of small cell is to have close range delivery of data. So it's generally about 500 feet. And in Burridge, we happen to have larger lots. So in some cases, it might be 1 or 2 small cells for a block. In other cases, it might be a few more. It just depends on what the look of the street looks like. But these generally act as kind of conductors for the data to go to the small cell and then up to the larger network to just be a better facilitator of data.
And this is happening regardless of how we go. Okay.
Yeah.
So,
Following up with both trustees, can we, if AT&T has one or Sprint or whatever, can we require them to be together?
We can certainly,
Rather than
Yeah.
put them on, Sprint's on one pole, this one's on this pole, can you put both, double them up?
certainly we can look at it, with co-locating. We can certainly say if you're going to go on this pole and 5 feet away there's another pole with space on it, it probably would fall into that 100-foot location rule. We can suggest a new pole. The issue is that if we say they need to be a certain height off the ground and there's no more room to install it, we might have to look for alternate locations. If there's not enough room on a certain facility, the law says that we can't have them arbitrarily just create room. They need to go on their own pole where there's room already. So it can be a little bit tricky, but certainly to your point, we can certainly look more into combining and co-locating as much as possible to minimize the amount of new poles they can put up.
We're just stating that within 500 feet, there could be multiple poles.
Yeah.
Facilities won't take more than,
Well, it'll depend. I mean, I know one of the big designs is hanging it from a strand. And so if we're able to do that, that could create a lot of opportunity because there's just a lot of power lines within the village. And we can eliminate the need for a lot of poles right there. But it may come down to that companies may not want to locate it like that. And we can't necessarily dictate to them how they install it.
Okay.
There are some options on where, but not necessarily how.
thank you.
Do you know by chance how many village-owned poles there are in the village?
I know that I asked the village engineer earlier today, we have a little over 200 streetlights in the village, and that's what those red dots were a couple of samples. I don't think we own telephone poles, so we can't go on those. So I think the streetlights would be the initial first option that we want to look at as being kind of our least intrusive way of doing this. Aside from that, not owning the utility, and this happens in a lot of towns, the town doesn't own the utility, and thus there can be kind of limited on where things can go.
I'd like to ask the village administrator to give us a synopsis of all that information and how we got to this point.
Well, how we got to this point? Well, the state legislation approved this bill. I mean, the Illinois Municipal League was heavily involved in trying to craft this more in our favor, but there wasn't much success with that. This has been going on for a year or two, 2 years now, I think. And there's been rumors of a trailer bill that might give local government a little bit more authority. But right now, this is what we have to deal with. And I'm confident that our village attorneys have prepared this as restrictive and as possible and to give us as much local control as possible. my opinion, it's not enough, but my opinion doesn't matter in this case.
Kind of like we don't have much choice, so.
Right.
We appreciate the education. Any other questions of him? We have a resident that would like to address this. And by the way, if any residents, either on TV or here tonight, would like more information on this, they're welcome to certainly make an appointment with Evan to go through something where we have really no choice on this vote. So, yes?
Mark Thomas, 7515 Drew. Couple things I wanted to bring up. One is as far as if they remove the equipment or stop using the cell, do they remove the equipment? The cellular industry, that was a huge problem where they would abandon towers, and we had abandoned towers all over the area. There were no real owners of them. A lot of times they would acquire property in strange ways, and there was no recourse in getting the equipment removed. So that's one thing. The other thing is these cells are relatively large emitters of RF, and each channel, even though it's extremely low power to communicate to a phone or other wireless device, it's all cumulative. So it's a sum of all those different channels that are in operation. And one problem from my experience in the communications industry, you can have interference problems. They call it intermod, harmonics that are created from these frequencies beating against each other and whatnot. And what happens if the residents start experiencing problems? For instance, their in-home services are interrupted now and then, or different things like that. I can see this being a real problem. And as Trustee Schneider said, I can see different service providers coming into the town, and each having a pole, one on one lot, the next pole down, there would be someone else on that pole, and so forth. I'm sure we've all seen it driving around, that there's 6 cell towers in just one small area. So that is a concern, and just because of the radiation aspect I was talking about in the interference, they're not going to want to put their cells that close together. So that is going to be a problem, and I don't know if there's a way that we can regulate. As Doug was alluding to, we may not have any recourse, but if there is some way that we can regulate it to where they can't, just all go in an area where every pole you see in that area has a small cell on it. So, thank you.
Mark, I do know, I'll have Evan come up here now. Thank you for the questions. I will, on these 2 topics though, for removal interference, I believe you should contact your state representative. His name is Jim Durkin. And if you need his address, I can provide it.
Okay, thank you.
Taking those one at a time. The first answer to the first question about removal, if they're abandoned, is yes. We have the ability to contact them and have them removed. If nobody comes and removes them, we can take them down ourselves, because they would in effect be renting on our property. They're village-owned utilities that we're renting space to, and if you're not using them properly, we have the right to kick you off. The larger question about co-location and radiation, that was one of the main reasons why municipalities didn't want this, was because we got no say in it. Basically, if the providers want to come in and they say, I think Drew Avenue is a great place for small cell. Small cell is going in on Drew Avenue, and we have very little recourse to stop it. And that's why there was pretty unified objection to this all across the country, is that it really does remove local control of the right-of-way for utilities and poles like that. And no, absolutely no argument to that point. We're kind of going to be stuck with this, and we're going to have to just make the best we can out of it. California somehow got this preempted. They got it off the books, and it was vetoed by the governor. They're the only example out of the entire country so far that actually had a bill go all the way to the governor and it wasn't signed into law. So 20 states have it, 1 didn't for that reason. So there's a lot of momentum on the telecom side, but basically, yeah, that's pretty much where we're stuck with, yeah.
Thank you. Oh, I'm sorry, Alice, you'll need to get to the front to ask the question, if you would, if you don't mind.
Alice Crampet, 7515 Drew. It's an out there question. We own our telephone pole. Am I allowed to rent it out, or do I have to get a permit? How would that work? Because there's a bunch of really old telephone poles along Drew Avenue that were owned by the people. They weren't put in by ComEd or whatever until like years later. So something that, I mean, somebody should check with the homeowners. They probably shouldn't have the power to just rent their poles. If I do, I'm gonna charge at least $1,000, so no. No, just, I don't know.
We'll find, we'll see if,
I have that answer. Yeah, if you have, let's just say you own a telephone pole, which happened to be in a pretty strategic location, you have the ability to enter into a private agreement with a telecom provider, and you can get your $200 a year. You are subject to bulk zoning requirements. Because we don't have anything on the books yet, we can certainly explore how we would actually do that in a residential area. The law basically speaks to it being a permitted use in commercial and industrial areas, so, you know, the manufacturing districts in the village, downtown, things like that. But yes, you would be subject to zoning requirements, but yes, you are permitted to rent your own land or asset should it be useful to a small cell provider.
are they under the same restrictions of $200 per, or would that only apply to municipalities?
That's everybody.
Applies for, you know,
So if you owned a building next to maybe a highway, you know,
for example.
you're stuck, you're capped, just like everybody else, so,
Thanks for the bad news.
sorry.
Okay. I'm at a motion to approve 6A.
So moved.
Second?
Any discussion? Roll call, please.
Trustee Snyder?
Yes.
Trustee Francis?
Yes.
Trustee Pavesa?
Trustee Pavesa? He might have, he's out on partial medical leave, so he may not be immediately available, or Al?
Yes,
Okay, he's here. Are you, we need your vote on 6A for the small wireless facilities. Are you a yay or a nay?
I don't think we have much recourse on that, do we?
No, we don't.
I would say yes.
Thank you. Trustee Skiappa?
Yes.
4-0.
Okay.
Comment.
Passes 4-0. 6B.
Comment, please.
I'm sorry?
Comment, please. Could staff please let us know when the first application comes in, so we get a heads up and what they're proposing and what it's gonna look like and where it's gonna go, so, you know, we don't have a lot of control over this, or little control over this. Like a heads up, please. Thank you.
That's a good idea.
And just to note, we do plan to bring back ideas for design standards to you as soon as we possibly can, just so we can get it on the books before any of these go up. But certainly we'll keep you apprised of when we start seeing these.
Thank you.
New chapter for us all.
Yeah.
We'll find out what happens. Now, 6B.
Is, I believe the petitioner's asking for this to be remanded to the Plan Commission, is that correct, Evan?
Yes, this was a consideration of EO3 2018 for 8200 Steepleside Drive. They requested a variation to permit a rear yard setback reduction from 60 feet to 35 feet in an R2A district. The Plan Commission decided to recommend against this petition. However, the petitioner has let me know during the week that they asked this be remanded to the Plan Commission for further consideration.
Okay. Any motion need to be taken here?
Yes, you would need to make a motion to remand.
Remand it?
The
Okay.
Plan Commission should add that their intent is to amend their petition, as I understand it.
Trustee Francis?
Does the petitioner intend to present any new information or evidence to the Plan Commission for the purpose of remanding?
I believe the new evidence or new information would be a revised setback request, reducing the degree of
Reducing the request.
variation.
Okay.
May I have a motion to remand 6B back to the Plan Commission?
So moved.
Second.
Okay. Motion and a second. Any further discussion? Roll call, please.
Trustee Scappa.
Yes.
Trustee Paveza.
Yes.
Trustee Francis.
Yes.
Trustee Snyder.
Yes.
4-0.
6C, Village Administrator or Assistant 2?
Yes, I will turn this one over to Evan as well. This is a recommendation from the Plan Commission.
Thank you, Board Administrator. This is Z17 2018. The request is at 304 Burr Ridge Parkway. The request is to have a special use approval pursuant to Section 8 of the Burr Ridge zoning ordinance for a pet service store in a B1 business district. There also was a request for a variation from Section 11 to permit the service store with a parking variation. So again, this is a county line square. This facility is currently under park, so any facility or any use that goes into this particular shopping center, if the parking exceeds the previous uses, they need to have a parking variation as they are worsening or making it worse, the parking situation. The petitioner is Steve Holland. He owns a business called Beach for Dogs. Beach for Dogs generally is a dog training and grooming business exclusively serving dogs, thus the name, Beach for Dogs. They requested a pet service store in a B1 district as well as the parking variation. Pet service store is a special use currently listed in the B1 district. There's no text amendment involved here. The majority of the discussion really was on the impacts of what a pet service center, pet service store would look and have feature-wise in County Line Square. There's a lot of restaurants over there. There are some other high-end boutique uses over there as well. So the Plan Commission had a lot of discussion regarding animal waste, handling of animals, would they be walked, noise, dogs barking, things of that nature, as well as the parking itself. The previous user was Tuesday Morning, which is a retail store, of course. It was our interpretation as staff that this was a general retail and service use, which also has the same parking requirements as a traditional retail center. Petitioner had stated that a third of their business's revenue comes from a retail source, such as animal accessories, leashes, collars, things of that nature, and the rest of it would be provided via their service, via training and grooming. Plan Commission had concurred that there was no need for a variation and in fact passed a motion stating that this should be considered as a general retail and service use, thus not needing a parking variation. They also passed a motion requesting that this be granted a special use approval. If you have any further questions, I'll be here to answer them, but the petitioner is also here should you have any for them.
Okay.
I'd like to have
Snyder?
will the petitioner come up?
Steve Holland on behalf of Beach for Dogs and Zach Holland.
The question I have is, okay, the previous owner or shop had 9 spaces for 2,500 square feet. You're gonna have up to 20 physical animals at one time, correct? I find it kind of hard to believe there's only gonna be maybe 9 cars there. And the second thing is when Evan brought up the fact that you receive most of your income or the bulk of your income from what you're selling versus the training. I would, if I'm gonna bring my dog to you, I'm gonna hire you to fix the dog. I already got the collar. Can you tell me, is it like a 50-50 or from retail? I kind of curious that statement.
No, our retail sales are more about 30%, 33 to be exact. The services sales are more 60.
70% is more of the service of the training of the animals or boarding. And it will be overnight also?
There's no overnight.
There's no overnight, no potential down the road overnight?
No. We've got facilities in Naperville and Lamont already. We're not that board and do other things. We're not interested in boarding at this facility at all. If you reference our website, by the way, just for clarification, I don't mean to waste your time, but I'm overly transparent. We offer vet services, boarding services. Those services are done at other facilities. This is going to be what we call a spoke. Our business model is more of a hub for the big 4,000, 5,000 square feet facilities, as I mentioned, in other locations. This is 2,700 square feet. It's going to be more of a spoke. So we're not going to offer all of our services at every location.
You did some projections at this location. You defined it that you'd be able to pull enough animals to train at here. And all the training is done at your facility here, not taken from one to the other, correct?
Correct. The training's done here, but when we finalize our training, this is another question that was asked before. When we finalize our training, we do it in the customer's home. So if I was to train your dog, and you did have a collar or what have you, we're gonna work with your dog at the facility, but then when we're done, we're gonna spend time with you, roughly about an hour at your house, saying, what are your problems? What issues do you have at your home with your dog? And then we fix those problems for you.
Thank you.
Okay. Trustees? Any questions?
How long have you been in business?
This is our 4th year.
And you have, I see here, you have 3 locations?
Correct.
Okay. And do these other locations, or any other ones, just training locations? Like Naperville, you have Naperville, Lamont, and Lombard.
No, this is our first scope. This is
Okay.
our first small, just training location.
All the other ones, they board, you train, you wash them too?
But boarding, training, daycare, grooming, vet services, everything across the board. Yeah.
At those 3
At other
locations?
locations.
This one, and this one will only be
Training and grooming.
training and grooming? Okay. That's all, thank you.
Thank you.
Any questions?
Questions? Thank you.
Well, I would just like to say that I'm a bit concerned. I don't get the chance to vote on this unless it's a tie vote. But I'm a bit on the concern side about 2 things, parking and barking. And first I'd like to ask you about the parking, actually both kind of fall into it. You estimated there's gonna be a maximum number of 20 dogs, you said? Is that, what restricts that?
I don't know. The 20 to 27 is really the number that we were thinking about. Did you guys have our material from the past, the packets? If you look at our facility, each dog has its own bed. The dog's sitting in that bed. Based on the square footage, we can really only have so many dogs per square footage. It's just been our experience where in Naperville, we have a 4,000 square foot facility. It's really comfortable at 40 dogs. So that's where this being a 2,700 square foot facility, we're thinking more 27 on average. So that's where that number came from. It's really not scientific, it's just through our experience that we've noticed that. The answer.
If you had demand for 30 or 40 dogs, would you have the physical space to put 30, 40 beds there?
In our other facilities, yes.
No, I mean, well.
But we wouldn't
if you-
need to in that
If you bring your
facility.
dog, if I bring my dog to your place, you're probably not gonna drive the dog to Naperville. So what I'm saying is if you had more demand than 27 dogs, would you make it larger than that?
No, it's routine for us to have a waiting list. We would just say, we'll schedule you next month or the following month. We wouldn't have to jam in the facility if that's what you're getting at.
That's kind of what I'm asking, so.
Yeah, if you looked at our facilities, guys, I mean, they're marble and bamboo, incredibly high class, very, very, very clean. It smells of coconut. It's a very, very high-end boutique facility. We would never devalue the brand by jamming all those dogs in and looking unprofessional.
And by the way, I'm a businessman first, so I get it, and I appreciate, and we appreciate any and all businesses coming for Ridge, and it's a service that's obviously needed. The question really is venue, I go back to parking and barking, and if so, at that number of cars, your main traffic flow is what times during the day?
We're open from 7 a.m. to 5:30 p.m. And from 7 to like 9:30 is our high traffic time. And then in the evening, it's more 3:30 to 5:30.
So you close at 5:30?
Yeah, we're still cleaning up at 6, but we're really done and the doors are locked at 6 p.m.
Dogs are gone.
Gotcha. What is your experience, or what experience? Oh, actually, I'll have to ask the planning commissioner, the chairman of the planning commission. What's the other question? But what's your experience in the noise level?
Well, to reference your parking and barking statement, which by the way, I love that line. Parking. We're a training facility. They're not allowed to park. They're not allowed to get off their bed unless we say you can get off their bed. If, from a trainer's point of view, if a dog's barking, it's typically saying danger, danger. We're not going to have that issue. And at our other locations, we don't have that issue. So there's not a barking issue. I don't want you to have the image in your mind, which I would understand if you did, that we're gonna have 27 dogs running around here in chaos. That's not what we do.
Okay, well, thank you very much. I have questions for the village the assistants and as well as the planning commissioner. So thank you very much. Any other questions of the petitioner at this time? Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Evan, if parking becomes an issue, or parking, what I guess, what's our ability to take away the special use? Is it annually? If those
Yeah.
become issues?
So if it's a question of taking away the special use, it would be a question of they're not following the special use as described in their business plan.
Right.
That's the general way that the village has done special use approvals. It's pursuant to you executing on the business plan in a good faith manner. An example of that would be is if you find that they're boarding dogs overnight, they're open till 9 o'clock, they've got 50 dogs in there. It wasn't what we were making the decision based upon tonight. In terms of noise or parking quantities, the zoning ordinance really just creates those as guidelines as to what they need to provide. Noise would be challenging just because there are some noise standards they have to abide by, but I don't immediately know if that would be how we would necessarily go about enforcing that on a code level. It would be, we basically have to do a lot of observational tests as to what that would look like. It's almost hard to project what that would look like in a shopping center. I can remember I did visit the Lamont location, which is right next to a restaurant in that particular strip mall. I did not find it to be a loud facility, but at the same time, you never know. They're animals. You just can't predict these things all the time. So in terms of getting rid of the special use based on their performance, it really would come down to more of a subjective measure at that point. Did they violate the business plan? Did they not follow the special use to the letter that we allow them to have it at? They're generating way more traffic than they said they would. It would almost have to come back on what does it actually look like after the fact. So.
Thank you. I have a question for Greg now. Chairman, how are you?
Just fine, thank you.
Thanks for being here tonight. Two questions. First off, who's on the east and left and right hand side of this space?
There was a quiz tonight. Greg Chupa, the Plan Commission. I believe you have the dance center, and then on the other side is not yet to Dow. I'm not sure actually.
So we're going from Fred Astaire. It's going to be Fred Astaire. Then there's that little courtyard with the benches. Then it would be Beach for Dogs, the Hen House, the Yoga Studio, Leva Boutique.
I'm sorry, say it again. Was it Hen House you said?
Yeah, the paint and sip concept that was approved maybe in April. They're actually opening in the next 3 weeks, I think. There's a small yoga studio. Then it would be a couple of, there's the Med One, the chiropractic clinic. I think the dentist is there. And then you get to Capri on the end. I believe that's how it works.
Okay, thank you. Was there ever any discussion about like a pickup lane or pickup parking spot at the planning commission in case, kind of like a to-go spot like Starbucks installed and like the pet store has?
No, there was not. The understanding was that it is a pickup and drop off, and the drop off would be between 7 and maybe 9 or so in the morning. So within that couple of hours, dropping off 25 dogs, we didn't think
one spot
was going to be a problem. Maybe a little bit more so in the afternoons if you got a little more traffic around. But even then, it's before the prime traffic we thought of the restaurants, so it would not be bad if we were able to find some parking spaces. It's not a bad idea just for the idea of walking the dog across the area, but that was not brought up. We thought that the available spaces were adequate for drop off at those 2 times.
And did you or any of the planning commissioners go to visit the current stores that they have to find out? I mean, again, these are just, I'm just being a little kind of devil's advocate here, trying to make sure everything is so we have all the information to make that decision tonight. Did you or anybody of the planning commissioners go to visit one of their other facilities?
No, I've been to our vet and a couple of facilities like that with our dog, And I would say the general attitude of it, I don't really notice a lot of dog noise or something from the outside of their parking lots, but not visited their specific ones. We did ask a question about walking dogs during the day, and we're told they go out the back, which is something that we would not want to see dogs walked up the front of the stores. But that was a concern of ours, and the answer was that the back pay slot area would be available for walking.
Good, thank you. Thank you. Any questions? Trustee Francis?
Question for Evan
Okay.
or staff. Thank you. So this petitioner stated he's going to be open 7 a.m. to 5:30 p.m. and then cleaning up and locking up at 6 p.m. What were the hours of Tuesday morning, the previous tenant?
I believe they were a little later in the morning. They were like a 9 to 8 type of use. So
9
it's the
a.m.
same
to 8?
hours, but it's differently. Yeah, 9 a.m. to 8 p.m.
8 p.m. So they overlapped with the busy time for the restaurants.
Yeah, and this one closes a little bit earlier.
Thank you.
Can we turn one of the handicap spaces in a short period of time for a pick and go?
I'd have to look into that, only because we have to have a minimum number of handicap spaces per.
It's gonna get by Capri and where they're planning on going, it's gonna be really tight if the pickup is all at 3:30, 4:30, 5:30.
Sure.
And we could use temporary, is there a way to get around something? Because all the handicaps are not used at once, that I've seen. Being a resident for 30 plus years, but maybe use, as you used, Mayor, a stop and go for a temporary at certain times to make it easier for the petitioner.
I can certainly speak to the property owner about making a standard space a 5-minute drop off for Beach for Dogs, the way there is. I think we have 10-minute spaces over by Subway and the dry cleaners. Got 3 or 4 right there. We can certainly talk about that. I just don't immediately know how many handicap spaces exist over there or where
I
they're
was just thinking out loud because
Sure.
we have a major parking problem there already.
Right.
That's why I'm asking the question, to make this a little easier, as the mayor brought up.
Trustee Francis?
So building on Trustee Snyder's point, if there was a space or two dedicated for drop off and pick up, 5-minute time limit, 10-minute time limit, and the store closes at 5:30 and then at 6 o'clock everybody goes home, what happens to that space in the evening? Can other tenants use it, or is it still dedicated?
What I was trying to use is the handicap space. Can we utilize one for a short
So,
time?
talking to my handicap friends, they claim that County Line Square is underparked for handicap parking.
Okay,
So I would,
That's why I'm
I
asking
would
the
not,
question.
personally, I would not go that direction.
that's why I'm asking. That's a great point. Thank you, fellow
So-
trustee.
And actually, to answer your question, Trustee Francis, at Starbucks, we made it clear on the sign that it's only 10-minute parking from like 6 a.m. until 12 noon.
Oh, okay.
So the assumption is after that, it could be used for other purposes. This would be kind of tough because this would be, only 10-minute parking between 3 and 5 or 3 and 6. That might be a little tricky, but.
Understood.
And
I see your point. Thank you.
but that's really, we look for reasons to make it work, and that's
Sure.
that would be a possibility. So,
Thank you.
any other questions of the staff, the petitioner, or the chairman? Okay. Do I hear any motions?
Make the motion to grant special use approval for the zoning ordinance to permit a pet service store in a B1 business district.
Second.
Motion and a second. Any further discussion? Roll call, please.
Trustee Francis?
Yes?
Trustee Schiappa?
Yes.
Trustee Snyder?
Yes.
Trustee Pavesa?
Yes.
4-0.
Motion passes 4-0. Welcome to the village. Just keep your parking and barking in line. We love dogs, but parking and barking is always a challenge. Okay, under resolutions. Consideration of resolution approving preliminary plat for the Dramonis subdivision located at 15W 110 87th Street.
Last one with me. Thank you, Mayor. This is a preliminary plat of subdivision, 15 West 110 87th Street to the Dramonis subdivision. Attached is the resolution approving said preliminary plat and subdivision for the 9.99 acre property at 15 West 110 87th Street. The resolution approves the division of 3 lots into 8, including a stormwater detention outlot, as is shown here. One item of note, the Pathway Commission has reviewed the proposal and recommends that a fee in lieu of the sidewalk construction is appropriate along the proposed new street, here, this new cul-de-sac called Penelope Court. However, they recommend the construction of a sidewalk along 87th Street as they have it listed as a high priority corridor on their pathway plan. This is not the final step in their platting approval process. They'll need to return for final engineering and plat approval at a later date before construction may begin on this entire project. If you have any questions, I'm here to answer them.
And this was a little bit of more background on this. It was this all part of the original zoning? You get a little bit more history
Yes,
on it?
the petitioner had originally requested a 15-lot PUD on this subdivision. However, that was rejected by the Plan Commission as being inappropriate for the corridor. They felt that it was these large natural lots and that the zoning should be retained. The petitioner also asked for straight rezoning, I believe to R3, I believe so, last fall or winter. That was also rejected by the Planning Commission for the same reason that larger lots were more desirable in this area. It's wooded with lots of trees. They felt that larger lots would just look a little bit more natural on this particular part of the village. So they've returned tonight. This is standard zoning. This is what they were allowed to do, and thus the preliminary plat of subdivision before you tonight.
Questions of the?
Can you remind us of what the zoning is around it? Is there?
Yes, behind it is, I think it's Hidden Lake. Lake Drive, I believe.
That is
R3 to the north. I believe there's a lot of R2A. The entire street is R2A going from west to east, and that was a big point of objection from the neighbors originally was, you know, we've got large homes with these deep lots on both sides of the street going west to east. We'd like to keep it as natural as possible, not shoehorn a lot of lots into this particular subdivision. So the street itself on both sides is generally R2A. I know there's some R3 north and I believe to the southwest a little bit, but not quite contiguous.
And they have a petition for R.
This is an R2A subdivision.
R2A. And the variance is because of the front lot width?
I don't believe there's any variances. I'm not sure how that got in there. The only,
If I may, this is an as-of-right subdivision. They have the zoning.
Okay.
It's R2A. They are in full compliance with the zoning ordinance with these lots.
I'm not sure how that word got in there. I apologize for that.
Okay.
There are no variations for the record. No.
Any other questions? Trustee Francis?
Just a comment to the petitioner. I appreciate him listening to the Plan Commission and especially listening to the residents. I attended one of the public hearings and the residents vehemently opposed the R3 zoning, the 15 lots or whatever was being asked for. And I appreciate him coming back with a workable plan that required no variances and no exceptions and no relief and is going to build a quality subdivision, and we welcome him to do that.
Anyone else? Discussion?
I'll make the motion
No,
to.
I ditto what Trustee Francis said.
Okay. Trustee Pavesa? Any discussion? May I have a motion to approve 7A?
I'll make the motion to approve the preliminary plat of approval for Morris subdivision.
Second.
There's been a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Hearing none, roll call, please.
Trustee Francis?
Yes.
Trustee Snyder?
Yes.
Trustee Skiappa?
Yes.
Trustee Pavesa?
Yes.
4-0.
Motion passes 4-0. And now under considerations, presentation of second quarter strategic goals. Village Administrator.
Thank you. Thank you, Mayor Straub and trustees. You'll recall that in the fall of 2017, the village board had a couple of workshops where we developed strategic goals for the next 2 years. And at that time, we had promised that we would provide a quarterly report to the village board on progress in those goals. So this is our second quarter of 2018 report, and I'll just try to briefly summarize some of the highlights of our progress in all of the goals. I would also point out for the board as well as the public that a complete report is in the agenda packet on our website if more information is desired, or as always, they're free to call myself with questions or comments about these strategic goals. A few that I do want to highlight in regards to communication strategies. We are working on developing a report for the village board, and we hope that sometime at one of the meetings in August, certainly no later than September, we'll be before you with a full report on our current communication strategies and ideas and suggestions on how we might make improvement. But the main focus will just be to show you all of the different ways we communicate with the residents, with the businesses, with you, with each other, and so that you have a complete understanding, and then we'll look for your input on how we might improve upon that. In terms of community events, the board had a goal to identify and implement more community interest generating events, and staff is helping to grow the Explore Truck event, which is scheduled for the Burr Ridge Village Center on August 2nd. Janet Kowal, Communications and Public Relations Coordinator, has been working with the Park District Board on considering a Taste of Burr Ridge type event. Finally, Janet and Evan Walter have been working with the Economic Development Committee and will be working with the Events Committee on the idea of an Arts Week in Burr Ridge. It's in the very early stages of concept, and we hope to develop that and see if there's interest in that, and if so, we'll be moving forward with that later this year or next year. Another goal of the village board is to define Burr Ridge, define what the village of Burr Ridge wants to be known for. We have prepared a request for proposals for village marketing. That will be going out in September. We will have this on your agenda for review in August. And that is, in the past, we've only done hotel marketing. We're expanding that concept to include village marketing that will generate business and generate overnight stays for the hotels, but we'll also work toward defining the brand that is Burr Ridge. Another goal was to identify village cost savings opportunities. Our Public Works Department did enter into a sweeping contract. In the past, we used our own equipment. That equipment has fallen into disrepair, so rather than buying new equipment, we tried going out under contract, and it came in $18,000 under budget, and it will eliminate the need to buy a $312,000 sweep or replacement for fiscal year 1920. That's an ongoing goal to identify cost savings, and it's good to have that on the list of goals because it keeps it front of mind, and we always know that that's an objective in everything we do. Likewise, with maintaining expenses, another goal. The village board wants to maintain comparable expenses for the next 2 years while continuing to provide equivalent or greater village service levels. One way we do that is whenever, and the current way we're doing that is to evaluate vacant positions and see how we can better improve services while maintaining those expenses. And we will be talking to the village board about that in the near future. And then, as you are aware, under the goal of pursuing a single zip code for the village, we're waiting any day now for a report back from the post office. They had promised us or said they had hoped to have a report to us within 60 days from May 25th. They were doing some surveying, some further investigation, so that would be July 25th, so maybe this week, maybe next week, maybe sometime soon we'll hear some good news from the United States Postal Service. Also, another goal is to study resident and business service needs. We are updating our business survey, and we hope to have that out to the business community in August to get more information and feedback from the business community about service needs from the village. Finally, intergovernmental cooperation, as the board is aware, we did approve the annexation agreement and zoning for the Rizika property and the zoning of the Malik property as per our intergovernmental agreement with Willow Springs. And I understand that Willow Springs is currently processing the same for the east half of the Malik property. And in fact, I haven't got a call today that the Malik property is ready to proceed with final engineering with the village. So that is progressing. There are certainly lots of other goals and progress to report on those other goals. Those are the ones that I thought deserve to be highlighted. If there's any other questions about any of these items, please let me know now or at any time.
Trustees, questions?
No questions. Thank you for the update.
Thank you, Doug, for that update. We are making a lot of progress and a lot more to come, so.
Thank you, Doug. Yeah, there's a bit of progress.
And 8B, would you like to
I would,
mention this?
yes and no. I'm very thrilled that Executive Secretary Barb Pop has the opportunity to retire and enjoy her retirement years after serving the village for 25 years. I'm very sad to see her go, as her knowledge and expertise and organizational skills are incredible, and she has served this village so very well for 25 years as the Executive Secretary, providing support to the village administrator, to several mayors over the years, boards and commissions. She's also served as our Secretary of the Board and Fire Police Commission. And if you need information about anything in her purview, she has it. She either knows it or she knows exactly where to find it in a matter of seconds, it seems like. And she's part of an incredible front office staff that the village is fortunate to have working at the Village Hall. And I just wish Barbara the best. There'll be more information provided to trustees and to others about retirement events planned for Barb. Her last day is scheduled for Friday, September 14th.
Thank you, and those remarks, her institutional knowledge is something you just can't replace.
That's right.
And as you said, 25 years, she's worked with a lot of different mayors, including myself, and I've appreciated her incredible service and accuracy, as well as sense of humor, and the fact that she was born and raised in Pennsylvania. Okay, so that was one thing that we shared. So, but I'm sure at a later time we'll have an official letter, a proclamation for her.
Yes.
But thank you for those kind words regarding Barbara. And so we need a motion to receive and file the letter of intent.
So moved.
Okay, a motion and a second? Second. Roll call, please.
Trustee Snyder?
Yes.
Trustee Skiappa?
Yes.
Trustee Francis?
Yes.
Trustee Pavesa?
Yes.
4-0.
Motion passes 4-0. And last but not least, actually, in this case, would you like to have the chairman of the Plan Commission?
Sure.
As long as he's
I think
here?
that's a very good idea.
That was
Put him on the spot.
because he's the chairman of the Plan Commission, so.
Receive and file letter of resignation from Plan Commission by Dane Grunson, effective July 12th. She was on the commission for 5 years, I believe.
8.
8 years, in 2010,
Close?
first appointed as an alternate.
Okay, 8 years.
But you're having so much fun over there, time flies, I get it.
Time just flies.
I get it.
I will miss Diane very much. She was a very, very good member of the Plan Commission, always there. She had her point of view, which is always welcome, and will always come up with something different whenever there's a question. So she'll be missed. I'm sorry she had to go. Hope nothing you said or anything. I know she's very busy, and she'll be missed. And I hope we can find someone that's close to be as good as she was as a commissioner.
As we understand, she has a new position, and of course, increasing family responsibilities. It's difficult for her to continue to serve the village, but we sincerely appreciate her service to the village for so many years, and look forward to hearing what goes on in her life and of course, and eventually her replacement, so. Thank you, Dane. And Trustee Francis?
Yes, I had the pleasure to serve with Dane from 2010 to 2013 on the Plan Commission, and she had great questions. She was always prepared. She did her homework, and she always served with the best interests of the village in mind. So, pleasure working with her, and we wish her all the best.
Yeah, all the Plan Commission always prepared. I think it's something to point out, and she was as prepared as anybody ever would be. It takes some homework, and I appreciate that.
Excellent. And may I have a motion to receive and file the letter of resignation?
So moved.
Second.
There's been a motion and a second. Any discussion? Roll call, please.
Trustee Francis?
Yes.
Trustee Snyder?
Yes.
Trustee Scappa?
Yes.
Trustee Beza?
Yes.
4-0.
Motion passes 4-0. Under other considerations, for announcement, deliberation, and/or discussion. Anything here? No events, I don't think, coming up. Car show's not until August 11th. Oh, I guess that's good for file on to the next one, next category. Okay, now back to residents' comments. Are there any residents who'd like to address the board this time? Seeing no one, reports and communications from village officials. I just remembered our next board meeting is until August 13th, isn't it?
That's correct.
So, remember, there is a Route 66 car show, Willowbrook Burridge Chamber of Commerce at the Harvester Park. That's one of our biggest. Actually probably be the biggest one this year because the first one got rained out. And but there's still open for still sponsors, and it's a great day to get out with the family. It is August 11th for the Route 66 car show. Is there anything else? Trustee Francis.
So Memorial Day weekend, some of us in Cook County had a power outage near 79th Street and Wolf Road. And so those of us ComEd customers that suffered through the power outage, we received a cryptic letter from ComEd stating that they're doing some sort of work to improve their infrastructure. Now I see a whole bunch of stuff going on Wolf Road and some other things going on 79th Street. Is that all related, or can the village request an update? Or is there an update available?
And we're
I'm getting questions from my neighbors, and I don't have the answers as to what's going on. And
actually,
ComEd
that'd be great. I'm Dave Preisick, our Director of Public Works. Can you answer that question?
Sure, there's a few permits going on. There was an emergency permit that ComEd did within days of the outage of Memorial Day, and they reconducted a section on 79th Street just near Dana Way. So that was in response to that. I understand there was a power line too that was across that went across I-55 that had fallen down in February, and because of that disconnection and temporary splices, part of the power failures and stuff happened and just snowballed as they resulted on Memorial Day. The conductoring under Wolf Road is a separate project. That's to enhance their abilities on that segment, and in the Willow Springs, Western Springs, that kind of area too. So that you're right that there is quite a bit of work on Wolf Road, but not necessarily related to the outages.
On Wolf Road, will they be removing the utility poles, the existing utility poles, or are those staying in place?
I believe those are staying in place too, and then what's going underground is a supplement to all that.
Additional capacity?
So.
Okay.
Actually, thank you for mentioning that, Trustee Francis, because I would like all the residents to know the results of our meeting on Friday with ComEd. Actually, I put them all in my Friday wrap summary on Friday, where we had 6 members from ComEd. Originally we met here, but there weren't as many businesses to visit here, so we moved over to the conference room. They reported, I think, what was pretty good news. They had, since the meeting in early June, which came about because of the Memorial Day debacle, fiasco, all the outages that happened around the village. They did react very quickly. They've had visual maintenance inspectors to go around all 16 transformers. They did find 3 transformers that were suspect, and they're not having major difficulties, but they want to proactively replace them, take them out of service, as I said, in the near future. And they're also going to put a meter of some kind. I believe it is on the scanner on the one at Lifetime, because that was one that's been kind of flickering. And they did say that one of the main reasons for the Memorial Day deal was a cable wires going across I-55. And that was as a result of a previous repair. It was spliced. And as we all know, splicing is never quite as strong as hardwire. That's since been replaced. And they've been reacting pretty promptly, I think, and open communication with village, with staff, with public works, and village administrators. So things are looking brighter, but they also want us to report any and all outages so they can find out the rest of the remedy. So,
Good, thank you.
yeah, that was thank you for also reminding me. Anything else from village officials? Any non-residents that'd like to address the board this time?
Morning, Mayor, or good afternoon, I should say, Mayor. Is this the police chief sitting back here in the back?
It is.
Oh, good. I hate to attack somebody without them having a chance to defend themselves. Your police department is engaged in a federally...
I'm sorry, may I have your name and
My name
where?
is Robert Gallagher.
Robert Gallagher, and where do you live?
I live in Griffith, Indiana.
Indiana, okay.
And your police, the nature of this meeting or advisory is that your police department is engaged in interfering with a investigation into the violation of federal law. And that, as you know, anytime someone investigates a violation of federal law, they're generally covered by or subjected to a general protective order. No one can interfere with the investigation. No one can delay the investigation. No one can abridge the investigation. Abridge meaning diminish the investigation somehow. I have been investigating violations of federal law by a company called Case New Holland, CNH, as they're referred to, and they're within your borders. And in the course of my investigation, I was impeded by your police officers when the apparently CNH called your police department.
Sorry, you said you were impeded by police officers?
Your police officers.
Did you say, is that the word you used, impeded?
Impeded, in other words.
All right, I'm sorry, are you a federal agent?
No, I'm a citizen.
Okay.
But that still means I can investigate a violation of federal law. And even as a citizen, if you're investigating a violation of federal law, you're covered, you're subjected to a blanket federal order of protection. Meaning you can't interfere with an investigation into a federal violation.
Okay, and as you define a federal investigation, meaning, but is the federal government investigating it, or you're I'm just trying to understand here. What?
Not at the moment, but they will be.
Well, okay.
As soon as I give them the list of witnesses. Now, these laws are concerning labor issues. They're nothing you need to be concerned about. However, CNH, Case New Holland, called the police and lied to them and said I was trespassing on their property. Now, I have video of everything, okay? And of course, your police officers did nothing about it. They went there, and immediately they went from CNH to the owner of the property where he had my car parked and told him I was up to something no good, and then got him to issue me an order not to trespass on his property. That's interfering with a federal investigation. Now, I think that's the way a 12-person jury is going to see it, and I think that's the way a federal judge is going to see it. Now, instead of a police officer coming to me and asking me, what am I doing there? No, he didn't do that. He went right to, your police officer went right to this business owner and made some sort of false statement or some sort of innuendo. I'll find out what he said to him because I'll get him up there in the Dirksen Federal Building under an interrogatees or interrogatories, and I'll find out what he said.
Were you on somebody else's property?
No. I was not on CNH property.
Okay, but were you on somebody else's property that they
The car was parked on his property.
was parked.
And the car was central to the investigation because it's an old car. It's a 40-year-old car, very noticeable, and all the former employees would see my car there and then stop and say, "Hey, Robert, what's going on? How come you're standing outside?" Then I would give them my phone number and tell them to call me, and then I can discuss the violations with them. So I needed to gather these witnesses, and time is of the essence. So then again, apparently they called again. I was parked at a church parking lot down the street from there. And I've already talked to both the deacons there, got permission to park there. But then the police officers started showing up. Now the witnesses are not going to approach me with a police officer standing there or a police car. So they're impeding my investigation. So what I've written up, and I think I've given a copy to your secretary for you, you're never in. And I think I gave one, she made a copy for Mr. Madden, I believe, is his name, Chief of Police. And it's a notice of intent, it's an affidavit. Because in the defendants are listed as Case New Holland and the City of Burbage. Now I'm writing up a federal complaint now under a 1983 civil action because they've engaged your department, you become an agent of an accessory after the fact of interfering with an investigation. CNH knows exactly what they're doing, they know exactly what I'm doing, they know what laws they've broken, and they've lied to your police department.
Mr. Gallagher, let me stop for a second. Pardon me, but you mentioned time is of the essence. You probably don't know this because you don't live in the village, but we have a 5-minute limit.
Okay.
And it's already 6 minutes. So I just have one question for you and one suggestion. Do you work for CNH?
I did.
You did, okay.
Yes.
So that's okay. And have you made you want to talk about this? Have you made an appointment with the chief?
I've tried to talk to the chief 3 or 4 times. I've left him a couple of phone messages. He's never returned any of the messages. He's never in. And when they cut off communications, and that also leads a long way into the appearance that they're trying to cover something up. And basically what I'm here is I'm telling you that your police department is engaged in an illegal activity. They're interfering with an investigation. Now the next time I'm there, I'm going to have this federal complaint completely written up. I guesstimate it will go into 30 pages. Now, federal judges don't like that. They only like 15 pages, but because of all the counts and all the extra letters I'm getting, every time they send me a letter, I gotta rewrite my complaint again and add another count. All kinds of intimidation, illegal intimidation going on. The next time I'm there, I'm going to have this completed. And if I even see a police officer within eyeshot of me, I'm going to go up to him and serve him with notice of this indictment. It's going to be a prayer for relief of $10 million. So I wouldn't go planning anything that spends a lot of money lately, because you might not have it. And I'm going to allege that they did so deliberately so that the insurance company won't be able to pay the judgment. So what I'm saying is that they're under investigation for labor violations, and the police department shouldn't interfere.
Like I said, your time was up before, but I think this is really not the place for this sort of discussion. But by all means, communicate through the police department and CNH, and I'm sure if there's something comes from a federal judge or something, I'm sure that we may hear about it.
I mean, we'll always have plenty more time in interrogatories and interrogees. I mean, I can take 13 hours up there. So we'll have plenty of time to talk in the future. Do you want a copy of this? Did you get a copy of this?
I have not been in my office.
This is just a notice of intent.
A notice of intent?
It's not the actual complaint.
By all means, yeah, just leave it over there, that'd be fine. I'll take it.
Over where?
On top of the shelf here.
Okay. All right.
Thank you.
Well, thank you very much for your time. I'll be looking forward to seeing you again.
Okay, thank you. Now, Need a motion to go into, we're about to go into closed session to discuss approval of closed session minutes of April 23rd, 2018, employment, B, employment of employee, and C, the sale or lease of public property. May I have a motion to go into closed session?
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any nays? Okay, ladies and gentlemen, thank you tonight for joining us.